Yo guys, what is up? Max on Borderlands 4 video, and today we're talking about Bloomreaper. Now in this video, we're going to be going over what we know about the raid boss that's coming out sometime this month, along with UVH6, and also my expectations and hopes for the boss. Hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Let's get right into it. So to start us off, we know that this is a invincible boss, aka a raid boss. It's going to be in an area that we've never traveled to before, so it will be in a new area. They said that it's most likely going to be in like the mountains of Terminus Range. And it looks like it's going to be in this kind of like iridium crater that looks really cool. Now, this is the boss, Bloomreaper, and it is going to be a vile enemy. They say it's by far and away the biggest enemy in the game, so even bigger than the like vault bosses, and it's gonna have a lot of dynamic gameplay during the boss fight. We see like a small little snippet of gameplay. So here's a picture of the boss in game. Now, it's hard to get an idea of the scale of this thing from like this angle, but we get a little bit better idea. You can see that there's this like, eye section that's connected to this flower section. And when we travel to some gameplay, they've got Bloomreaper the Invincible here. We can see that they're going to be purchasing it with cash. I talk about later in this video. This is a cash boss and not an iridium boss. I'm hoping it drops a ton of iridium. But here we can see them sliding into the arena, which sounds like it's going to be moving and shifting a lot. As you can tell, like if you're fighting Bloomreaper up here, there's not going to be like any cover whatsoever. But they did say you're going to be needing to like grapple. And I'm imagining these platforms are shifting and moving around underneath you. Here we can see some gameplay of Harlow fighting Bloomreaper, which presumably looks like on that top plateau that we just saw. And here we get a look of Bloomreaper, but as you can see, it's kind of underground. It's only got its eyeball, and then the flower above its legs and its full height is kind of buried underneath. So I'm imagining these are going to be like pseudo-immune phases where you've kind of got to get Bloomreaper to come up out of the ground to like actually do damage to it. So that is all looking really cool. They said that this boss is going to have 5 brand new drops, and one of them sounds exactly like the Face Puncher. It's going to be like the Mantra Shotgun, which shoots fists out at enemies, doing like melee damage. It's a homage to Amara and her playstyle. As we can see, you're surrounded by vile enemies. It looks like we're going to want to bring a build that's got a lot of splash damage and high survivability, because there really is just nowhere to cover and hide. And this is once again going to be coming along with the new UVH6 difficulty, which is going to be the hardest difficulty in the game. Now, you'll note that the Bloomreaper patch launching alongside of UVH6 very much mirrors Borderlands 3's update that dropped the Maliwan takedown alongside Mayhem 4. Mayhem 4 was the hardest difficulty of the game, and one of the best things that Mayhem 4 did for Borderlands 3 is it added new exclusive legendary weapons and class mods. Now, currently, I think Borderlands 4 has a bit of an issue of rewarding difficulty. It's one of the biggest frustrations that I've seen is people being like, why would I even play on UVH5? I hear it's easier to get gear and legendaries on easy mode. And I think it's really important. It does seem like Borderlands 4 has gone a different direction, trying to make difficulty a little bit more optional than mandatory. But I really think it's important to players to be incentivized to play on the harder difficulty, not only for player retention, but just rewarding in a grinding game. If you have no incentive to grind, to make your build stronger, to kill bosses faster, or push into difficulties, then it's like, why even play? You know what I mean? You want to have an incentive to go grind that like Jacob's part on that weapon, or maybe get a little bit better enhancement so that your build is stronger, so you can push those higher difficulties. And exclusive legendary weapons and class mods would be a huge incentive to push up to UVH6. So I'm really hoping they do that. Now, we know that there's going to be 5 drops from the new boss. I'm imagining that doesn't mean that there's going to be 4 class mods and a single weapon. However, in Borderlands 4, how they did it, or Borderlands 3, is they gave Wotan new legendary pieces of gear and then scattered new Mayhem exclusive gear around the world. Like, you needed to go to like Necro to go get Amara's driver class mod. And so what I'm really hoping for is that they add UVH6 exclusive gear and especially class mods. That's the #1 piece of gear that I'm hoping comes from this. Class mods do so much to promote new build diversity, to shift up the meta, and Borderlands 4 or Borderlands 3's class mods on Mayhem 4, sorry, a little confusing with the 3 and the 4s, really changed build diversity. Like the driver class mod was genius, and to this day is my favorite Amara class mod, probably my favorite class mod in a Borderlands game. So I'm really hoping that they do these new class mods as UVH6 exclusives, and they could be ways to create and promote new ways to play the game. Right now, Trouble is completely underserved. Blue Tree 0 Point Harlow is completely unrecognized in the game, and Crucible Amon. All of these skill trees need like serious help, and I really hope that they get buffed and reworked, which we'll talk about later. But some new class mods to promote playstyles that haven't really existed would be sick. Now, the patch for Borderlands 3 that added Mayhem 4 also reworked and updated the dedicated legendary item drop pools for bosses, and I'm personally really hoping they could be on UVH6 or just in general, but that they allocate dedicated drop sources for legendary enhancements. Legendary enhancements are a huge pain point. They're crazy powerful. They can do cool things, but there's no good way to farm them. I think UVH6 would be a great place to put dedicated drops for these. Like you could dedicated drop farm Jacob's enhancements from Origo, for example, or something like that, and Origo would be dropping these legendary enhancements, and you could put them in the different vaults. You could put them dropping in general from the boss, but I'm really, really hoping that we get, with this update, a dedicated source for legendary enhancement farming so that we can really fine-tune and hone our builds, rather than just randomly farming for hours, hoping to get what we want. Now, in the gameplay, we see that the boss costs 0 gold. It might be changed to Iridium when it launches in its final version. It might be gold. My hope for this boss is that it is a reliable and most efficient, ideally, Iridium farm in the game. Right now, to farm Iridium, you just need to do Vile bounties, which are just kind of mind-numbing. They're so much better than the other options to farm Iridium that you like kind of have to do them. This being a massive Vile enemy, I think it should be obvious that it rewards the most amount of Iridium. If it cost Iridium to start the fight, I think that's also fine. Like, let's say it's like 100 Iridium to start the fight, but if you get the kill, you get 1,000 Iridium. But if you failed, that's a sunk cost. You lose that Iridium. I think that could work as well, but I really think that it needs to be dropping anywhere from like 750 to 1,000 Iridium a kill. Ideally, Vile bounties drop like 400 Iridium a kill, and you can do them in 30 seconds. They're pretty easy, so I think it should be magnitudes better than killing a single Vile enemy. So I'm hoping around like 1,000 to a little bit more ballpark as a way to reward players who can manage to take down this boss, but also as a new farm to promote other activities to play in the game for Iridium for doing like big encores later on. The next thing that I'm kind of hoping for, and I'm a little torn on this, so I'm curious to what your guys' opinions would be on this, is I would be down if there is a mandatory mobbing section before this boss. They said that in the like kind of press release when they originally teased this boss, that it was going to have a challenging kind of mobbing section prior to the boss. Now, all of the vaults have these like mobbing sections to them, but once you do them for the first time, you can just skip all of the enemies and move on. I think what could make this boss unique is if the mobbing section is kind of required a little bit beforehand. I'm not like 100% sure if other people would want that. Me personally, every single boss in the game, we can click a button and farm over and over and over again. So I wouldn't mind if there's a boss that we do have to do a little bit of mobbing beforehand. I think that would make building a lot more interesting because you could like go into the fight with a build that can do mobbing and bossing. That's kind of what made takedowns so interesting. And that would still set it apart from takedowns, as takedowns always have like a mobbing section with a boss, then a mobbing section with the boss. This would be like a half of a takedown. So it'd just be one mobbing section and then a boss. I think it could be really cool as long as the drop rates and the rewards from the boss mirror the amount of time that it would take to get to it. You know, if the boss has a 3% drop rate for an item and it takes you 10 minutes to do a kill, that would obviously be horrible. But if if the drop rates and stuff like that mirror the amount of effort that it takes to get to the boss and kill it, I think that could be really fine. Let me know your opinions down below. Next, I'm imagining that UVH6 is going to be launching with significant balance changes. They did say that like the bigger kind of balance rework things are going to be part of these bigger updates, and so UVH6 is going to be a bigger update. And I really, really, really need to see them actually make significant change to Trouble, 0 Point, and aspects of Amon's Crucible tree. I think it is absolutely crazy that we are 3 months post-launch and have action skills and skill trees that people are basically just refusing to touch because they are worthless. We did not have this issue in BL3, in my opinion. There was like Flax Purple Tree, which was paid content that like never really was super great. But for the most part, I don't think BL3 ever had it this bad. They've taken multiple buff patches at some of these things like Trouble and 0 Point, and I think they're too afraid to like make them too strong, and so they're doing these small buffs, and doing small buffs to build up to like get to a point that the thing is good would be fine if the cadence of updates was more frequent. If they're buffing Trouble every week by 25% to try to see what a good balance point is, that'd be great. But we've had 2 Trouble buffs in like 3 months, so that's clearly not happening. So I really want to see like reworks or significant buffs to Trouble. They could do that with new class mods. If a new class mod drops that completely changes the way that Trouble functions or the way that 0 Point functions, they could do that without having to do hard reworks or hard skill points. If they introduce a class mod that changes the way that these skill or abilities function, I think that is a worse route because then you're pigeonholing builds into a single class mod. But we really need to see something along those lines. They touted Borderlands 4 as having the best build diversity out of any of the games, and right now I still think Borderlands 3 takes that card easily. The build diversity in Borderlands 3 was insane, and we really need some changes in Borderlands 4 to get there. Speaking of build diversity, we really need to see some shield balance. Right now, the only shield that's really worth a damn is the Watts for Dinner, plus maybe the Super Soldier on specific builds. But the fact that we are once again falling into this pigeonhole of like one shield being good when BL2 did have this issue with the B. BL3 had this issue later on in life once the game was like at its end of service with the Revolter. But up until that, I think BL3 had a relatively decent build diversity. You had builds using I'm blanking on it, like the Cryo Heart plus the Old God. There were so many different shields. You had the Stopgap. There's so many different shields that could suit different purposes. And right now, so many of those shields just don't serve any purpose. There's no reason to use them. And so that's what I'm hoping for. There's the Infernal Wish. The Infernal Wish was great. Different shields had different niches. Right now, I don't think of like any real good niches that any of these shields are filling. Even like the melee shield that gives you melee damage increases is going to lose out to a Watts for Dinner right now for like most cases because of additive soup versus bonus damage. So yeah, really need to see some balance on that. Next up, I would love to see some throwing knife alternatives. The devs have already said that they're looking into this, but the crit knife has been a problem since the game launched. And I don't think the crit knife needs to get nerfed or changed, but I do think that we need absolutely more things to use besides the crit knife. The reason the crit knife is so popular, even if they nerfed it again, which they've already done and then they buffed it, even if they like nerfed it again, for example, if you're a gun build, there's just not much else to throw. Even if the crit knife was like a 15% crit chance flat and it didn't stack, there's still not that much else to throw. There's like technically the like fish slap or the swordfish that could give you fire rate, but I'd love to see throwing knives that allow for different builds and different play styles. For example, I threw out some options, but like a throwing knife that allows you when you hit an enemy, you go invisible and your next shot gets like amp damage. You could have it with like a red text to flak. That could be really cool. A throwing knife that procs your kill skills. If you hit like a crit or you hit an enemy in the head with a throwing knife, you could proc kill skills. That'd be super useful for bossing. And then if you start introducing these things, then there's more incentive and things to use other knives besides just the crit knife. I think throwing knives not dealing melee damage is fine, but it'd be really cool if we got a throwing knife that like did melee damage, and maybe instead of throwing it, it like rotated around you, and you could have like a blade storm spinning around you that did melee damage. There's so many cool things that they could do, and right now this slot is being completely underutilized and absolutely bullied by the crit knife. So I'm really hoping we get some cool alternatives there. Next up, I'd love to see some license part and enhancement buffs. The license part system is one of my favorite aspects of Borderlands 4. I think it makes loot really unique and completely changes the way that certain weapons work. So I love it. But if you were to ask, hey, Moxie, I want to farm this weapon, what part should I look onto the part, or like what part should I be looking for on this weapon? 99% of the time, one of those parts is going to be Jacob's. There's so many parts that really just don't have a niche. And once again, when I'm like asking for changes or buffs to things, I'm not asking for like maybe Hyperion to become the strongest in the game, but it needs a niche case scenario. It needs a reason to exist. And right now there's a lot of licensed parts that are just not really doing anything that could be. Hyperion is one of the biggest things. I still think Atlas could be buffed and looked at. Atlas on certain weapons, like the TK's wave and stuff like that, on weapons that like have horrible fire patterns are really nice. But there's so many things that could be more interesting besides just like Jacob's Torg on like literally everything. Next up, dedicated drop rate buffs. I've kind of gone back and forth on this, but at the end of the day, the players that are still playing this game are slowly starting to get fed up over time with just the amount of farming that you need to get the specific thing that you want. I think dedicated drop rates not getting buffed to be higher than they currently are, but normalizing them so that they're all equal. For example, most bosses that have multiple loot drops or have like an 8% drop rate item, like a 5% and like a 3%. I think those should all just be 8% drops, 8 to 10% drops. There's no reason that the like bod with infinite variance needs to be dropping at a 3% drop rate, for example. So I'm not asking for like crazy legendaries dropping everywhere, but it would be really nice to have a little bit more consistency with the drops. So when you're farming something, it doesn't feel like you're never getting something that you want because they're completely different drop rates. I think they should all probably be normalized across the board. Next up, in terms of like build and class diversity, I really think Gearbox needs to take a look at capstones almost across the board. There's so many capstone passives and also capstone skills that are just not being utilized in any builds because equipping the capstone makes your build worse. And I think that is really, really bad. Capstones in the past have been these super impactful things that like you might spend a whole bunch of points on things you don't even care about to get to the capstones because they're at the end of your tree and they're super cool. One of the biggest culprits of this right now is Vex. Vex has all of these capstones like Shiver that give you increased cryo damage and cryo status effect, Stormbless that give you shock damage and shock status effect. These are like some of the most lame final skills that are just additive soup with literally everything else that are just not fun to play around with. You've got Rafa, who's got like sick things, like your projectiles have a chance to ricochet, or you just double all of your overdrive bonuses, but Vex has got like the lamest things there are. Harlow, for example, has basically what Vex has with increased radiation or increased status effect damage and chance as a non-capstone. Like there's no reason for those things for Vex to exist as a capstone. And like Amon's probably the biggest culprit of this, just having like for example, if you look at his green tree, like reverse explosion, you have a capstone with a 60-second cooldown. No one is picking this. There's so many things that they just need looking at, and like all of these capstones for green tree I feel like need love, and capstones in general I just think need to be way more impactful. Now I could go on for literally hours talking about all the things that I want to see improved in Borderlands 4. I did make a 30-minute video prior talking about tons of quality of life improvements, endgame improvements, and a whole lot more. So I don't want to like repeat that entire list. I really just wanted to talk about the upcoming balance changes with the raid boss, UVH6, and what I'm hoping from this raid boss. I really hope it's an engaging fight. I hope they make it worthwhile. I hope it drops a really awesome loot, and I hope Gearbox makes the grind worth it, because that has been a big issue in the past. I've been underwhelmed by previous content launches, and so for me, more important than the Mercenary Day, more important than the Halloween event is Endgame. I've always been an Endgame player. It's what I care about most, and so that's why I wanted to make this video, is because I really hope they nail this Endgame drop, because Endgame is, in my opinion, I said this on the day the game came out, is the weakest part of Borderlands 4. So I really hope that this content drop bolsters that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.